Okay, so what if I told you there's a hidden, almost secret connection between mainstream Christianity and these ancient esoteric wisdom traditions? I know, it sounds kind of wild, right? Like a total contradiction. But today, we're going to explore how these two worlds don't just exist side by side. They can actually feed into each other in some pretty profound ways.
And that really gets us to the heart of it, doesn't it? Can you really be a devout Christian, totally solid in your faith, and also dive into traditions like Hermeticism or Gnosticism? Well, the answer, it's not a simple yes or no. It's way more complex and honestly, way more fascinating than you might think.
All right, so at first glance, this whole thing looks like a paradox. On one hand, you've got organized, established religion, and on the other, you have what's often called secret wisdom. Let's dig in and figure out why these two paths seem so at odds, and then uncover why that might not be the whole story. You see, here's something a lot of people miss. Christianity has always had its own incredibly powerful mystical tradition. I'm talking about giants of the faith like St. John of the Cross or St. Teresa of Avila. For them, it wasn't just about following the rules or going through rituals. Their entire focus was on having a direct, personal, and deeply real experience with God. And that inner experiential core, that's the key to this whole conversation. So, if that mystical foundation is already built into Christianity, the next logical question is, how does it connect to these other traditions? Well, some really brilliant thinkers didn't see a conflict at all. In fact, they saw a bridge.
And this idea of mixing traditions, it isn't some new age trend, not at all. Some of Christianity's most important minds have actually pushed for this very thing. Their goal was never to replace Christianity, but to make it deeper, arguing that all these paths, when you get right down to it, are pointing towards the same basic truths.
Take a philosopher named René Guénon. He made a pretty bold claim. He said that modern Christianity had become way too focused on just dogma and logic, and in the process, it had kind of lost its spiritual heart. He argued that these esoteric traditions weren't a threat, they were actually a necessary tool for Christians to find their way back to their own mystical roots. And then you've got Thomas Merton, a hugely respected Trappist monk. He looked at things like Eastern spirituality and didn't see a competitor to his own faith. He saw a complement. He truly believed these practices could help a Christian better understand the absolute core of their faith: love, compassion, and union with God. For Merton, this wasn't about replacing Jesus. It was about understanding his message on a much, much deeper level. But of course, not everyone is on board with this. This kind of exploration definitely has its critics, and there are some very real, very legitimate concerns from within the church. And this is where you really see the split, right? From the Orthodox perspective, playing around with esotericism just waters down the core teachings and can seriously lead people down the wrong path. But from the mystic's viewpoint, those exact same traditions do the complete opposite. They deepen your understanding of God and who you are. So you've got two totally opposing takes on the very same thing.
And look, this is a valid concern. The fear is that people might get distracted by the shiny objects, the cool rituals, the interesting symbols, and completely lose sight of the central message of their Christian faith. It's that classic trap of focusing on the form instead of the substance. So, what's the comeback to that? Well, the proponents of this union argue that this isn't about making up something new. Not at all. It's actually about going back to something ancient.
If you actually look at the history, it's pretty surprising. The early Christian church, it was deeply influenced by Gnostic thought, which is all about inner knowledge, and Hermetic traditions, which tried to understand God through nature and philosophy. And the Desert Fathers and Mothers, they were all about inner transformation. So when guys like Guénon and Merton talk about this stuff, they aren't bringing in some foreign idea. They're trying to revive a tradition that was there from the very beginning.
And that is such a crucial point. Exploring these traditions isn't a rejection of Christianity. It's a return. It's about re-engaging with the spiritual side that was absolutely essential to the faith in its earliest days. It's like rediscovering a lost piece of its own history. So, we have a really powerful argument on one side and an equally powerful warning on the other. So how do we square this circle? Well, the answer might be in a really important distinction between two simple but profound ideas. Okay, and this is the real game changer. It all comes down to understanding the difference between two big words: orthodoxy and orthopraxy. Think of it like this. Orthodoxy is what you believe. It's the core doctrine, the creed. Orthopraxy is how you live that belief.
It's the practices, the meditations, the habits that actually bring you closer to God.
This framework creates a really powerful way forward. A person can stay completely faithful to Christian orthodoxy, the core beliefs, while using what you might call esoteric orthopraxy as a set of tools to deepen their spiritual life. It's not about choosing one over the other. It's about using practice to make belief come alive.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, it suggests that this mystical union isn't just some dusty old historical debate. It's a living, breathing, and pretty powerful way to approach faith right here, right now.
At the end of the day, this journey isn't just about spotting some interesting similarities. It's a much deeper recognition that the path to God, to the divine, has two lanes. There's the lane of reason and doctrine, which is paved by the Church. And there's the lane of direct, personal revelation, which is lit up by mystical practice. And that brings me to a final thought, a question for you to really chew on. What if the most profound spiritual truths aren't locked away in just one tradition? What if they're found right there in the middle, at the intersection where all these different streams of wisdom meet? Thanks for digging into this with me.